I wish you could see how precariously I am sat right now, because I'm on the very edge of Chopper's bed, and it hurts. G'day folks, Wren here, and today I'm going to do the rainbow book tag. For some reason, rainbows have been like haunting me lately, but I've just been talking about rainbows with people lately. I've been seeing rainbow colored things everywhere, so it's like the universe was just telling me that I need to do something with rainbows. I was gonna say add color to my life, but like that's not happening. So, rainbow book tag. I saw Paige do this recently. Okay, so we're going through the colors of the rainbow and assigning a book to each of them. Now, Paige said that the book that you pick didn't have to have that color on the cover or anything, which is good because I don't think many of mine do. But we're just going with whatever the prompt for that color is. So red, a book that makes you angry. And like my immediate thought was A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I have to really think about that title every time. But I read this a while ago and I was just infuriated the whole time. The description of women was disgusting. The men in the book were so sexist and misogynistic that like I couldn't. Just the way Grady Hendrix describes women is disgusting. The other reason I was really mad at this book was because there was a time jump. Like I was getting so into this, and you know, the tension with the vampire in this small town, and I was like, yes, this is great. It started to get really creepy, and then there was a 3-year time jump. 3 years, that's so long. And then it was like all the tension had completely vanished and no one cared anymore. And neither did I. So that book infuriates me. Orange is a book that gets you fired up. I had a few options for this, but I decided to go with Hangman by Jack Heath. It's an interesting one to say that it fires me up. But I was just so entertained when I was reading this, and I was like, hell yes to everything that was happening. So like it was getting me fired up in that way. But this book is about a cannibal that is helping the FBI solve some cases. So we are in the point of view of our main character, Timothy Blake, who is a cannibal. And he's also really good at solving puzzles. So that is why the FBI kind of take him on as like a civilian contractor type thing, to help them solve some particularly bad cases. And he has this little side deal with the FBI that his payment is a dead body so that he can eat someone. It's so messed up, and it's just so fun and fascinating because, you know, you're in the point of view of this cannibal and you get to see him craving his next meal. You get to see him be really tempted by just the people he's talking to, and he's so hungry that he's thinking about what parts of this person would be most tasty and things like that, and it's just messed up and kind of hilarious, but ooh, so good. Like I highly recommend it because it's one of the most entertaining books I've ever read. Next up is Yellow, so a book that makes you want to sit out in the sun and read it. The reason I chose this particular book is because that is legitimately what I did. I read this lying out in the sun. And that is Sensory, Life on the Spectrum, an autistic comics anthology, edited by Bex Ollerton. I only just recently read this, and yeah, I read it lying out on a comfy chair outside in the sun. It was a really good time. This was so good. For anyone that has autism or thinks they might have autism, knows someone that is autistic, just wants to know more about what it's like living with autism, pick this up. It's fantastic. You get so many different points of view of what it is like being autistic. So there's is there a number of how many there are in here? There's this many stories in here, and yeah, it is for autistic people by autistic people, and it was really great to, you know, like see myself represented sometimes and to learn more about autism, which is always great. There were some really, really useful tips in here, and it was a really good way to explain certain aspects of autism that like made it easier for even me to comprehend, like let alone someone who isn't familiar with autism to understand certain things. And it's full of good resources and like tips and tricks on, you know, how to like calm yourself down after a meltdown, or how to avoid burnout as much as possible, or how to communicate your own feelings sometimes. It was really just normalizing autism because it is normal, you know. For me, autism is normal because that's just me. And it was good to like, you know, see so many different people experiencing things similarly to me. And that's really great. And yeah, I learnt a lot about myself while reading this. I just seriously, this is so beneficial. Seriously, it's amazing. Go read it. It's great. And this also has yellow on the cover. Look, I did it. So green is a book that makes you feel peaceful. Now this was actually kind of hard for me to find a book that makes me feel peaceful. Like that's not often an emotion that I associate with reading. I mean, I do read some really messed up stories, so that might be why. But I did find one that just makes me feel all like warm and gooey inside, and that is A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai. This is the first volume, and thank you so much for Meredith for buying this for me for Christmas. I appreciate you dearly. Thank you very much. This is just the cutest, sweetest manga. It is about this man randomly deciding to buy a cat, and he is dealing with a lot of grief. His wife always wanted a cat, but they never got one, so he decides to get one now after she has passed. It's him trying to figure out how to take care of a cat and him forming this really sweet bond with the cat. It's so adorable. And then you get so many points of view from the cat itself, and it's so cute. Because this cat was always like, he was always left at the pet store. No one ever wanted him, and he was always just like, oh, you know, I'm not ugly enough, no one's gonna love me. And then this guy comes along and he's like, Daddy! And it's so cute. Because, you know, it's just an insecure cat constantly being reassured that he is loved. And like, is that not just the sweetest little thing? This is a book that I would read when I needed a pick-me-up, because it warms my soul and it makes me smile and like believe in humanity in a weird way. Like there is good in the world. It's in this. Then for blue, we have a book that breaks your heart. There was really only one book for this. Brother Song by TJ Klune, the fourth book in the Green Creek series. This is my favourite series of all time. This book is tied with my favourite book of all time, which is Wolf Song, which is the first in the book in the series. They're both amazing, but oh my god. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed reading this. Oh my god. Like, I can remember when I first read this, the literal like like that's how much I was crying because of this book. It broke my soul. It did put it back together. I'll put that out there. That's something that TJ Klune is really good at. He breaks your heart, puts it back together, and then just like rinse and repeat. That's a Green Creek series for you. But this is a book about well, this is a series about a werewolf family and their pack and surviving a lot of traumatic instances that happen to them and finding all of their mates. That's the really basic story, and that's not a good description of it, but it's so good. Please pick it up. So this is our very last book where we get the eldest Bennett son finding his mate. To find his mate, he breaks away from the pack, which is soul destroying in itself, because he starts to go like a little bit insane because he's cut ties with his tether, which is his brother. And it's just, oh, the love these boys have for each other, like sibling love, it gets me every time, and it's beautiful. And then, you know, there is the big bad that we've been building up for 4 books. You know, that final battle happens in this. Okay, so there's a really soul-destroying moment with one of our characters. You know, it's like they're saying goodbye. Sobbing. Consistently. I had to keep putting the book down so I could sob. because I couldn't read any of the words. TJ Klune is just the best. So for Indigo, we have a book that makes you pensive. And again, this was a really hard one to figure out, but I did pick one in the end. Gonna have to read off this because I can't tell you the whole long title. That is Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. I read this a couple months ago and wow, it hit really hard, and I kind of went into a little bit of a life slump after reading it because I was just constantly thinking about it, and it almost changed my history in a way, or at least how I was perceiving past relationships, and like kind of in a good way, kind of in a not good way. It made me think about my asexuality and how I've denied it for so long, and even though I was denying it at certain points, it was still a factor of me, and it impacted things that I might not have wanted to think about. This is all very confusing. I know, it's confusing for me too. But this book really, really made me think deeply about myself and relationships and how the world views sex and how that doesn't really mean anything to me. Learning to love that part of myself, but also like I need to learn more about myself and my sexuality, and I think I just need to keep rereading this book to really get the full message, because it was just so overwhelming for me to read it because I was just thinking about so many things. But I do highly recommend this for, again, anyone questioning their sexuality, interested in asexuality, or who are asexuals. Like, it's such a good book and talks about really important topics. And like, ooh, the consent chapter, that sent me into a tailspin. And then the last colour is Violet, which is a book that makes you uncomfortable. And yeah, I knew pretty early on which book this would be. Can anyone guess? It is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. This book, spoiler, was my worst of 2022. It's awful. It's meant to be this whole like dystopian where trans people kill a TERF, you know, a particular TERF in mind. That was how it was marketed. Ooh, it's not that. It is a dystopian, and it is one full of trans characters, which was a nice change of pace, but it was constantly about all of these trans characters having sex. Like every chapter was about them having sex, and the way the sex was described, it was in a really uncomfortable way. And I think part of it was because as a trans non-binary person myself, the way these characters were talking about certain body parts made me so uncomfortable, because they were not gender affirming words used for certain body parts, and that made me very uncomfortable. And the fact that, you know, there's really graphic rape scenes that don't get mentioned, which, like, why don't they get mentioned? It's a huge part of this story. And so like that kind of came out of nowhere, and then you get the aftermath, like the medical aftermath of that rape scene, and it's like that scene just like kept happening. And so like that was really hard to get through. And then like the way that these trans characters talked about themselves was also like, it wasn't a happy positive thing. Like they were all really like upset, which, you know, it's the end of the world, sure, but just everything about it made me so uncomfortable. And also a lot of these sex scenes were like using sex as a form of self-harm. Again, uncomfortable, but just everything about this book was disgusting for me. Like, did not like it. And this is me being nice about it. But yes, that was the rainbow book tag, filled with a bunch of books that don't really match up with the colours, but that's fine. Do you have a book that makes you feel warm and fuzzy? Because if you do, please let me know. That would be great. I love warm and fuzzy books. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!